everyone, welcome back to another video. I wanted to talk about the 16-inch versus 14-inch in both the M2 as well as the M1 MacBook Pros. So if you're on the same boat, if you're deciding between the two of those, if you should upgrade from an M1 versus the M2, keep on watching as I share with you guys my thoughts. Back in the day, it was always easier to choose the 16-inch MacBooks versus the smaller sizes, especially during the Intel processor days of MacBook, only because usually the 16-inch displays will have a higher spec sheet as well as just better performance overall. However, today the playing field is a little different as the 16 versus 14-inch displays are pretty comparable with each other. For this year's model, the 14-inch display starts at $1999, gives you a 10-core CPU, a 16-core GPU, and starts at 512 gigabytes of storage, while the 16-inch M2 MacBook Pro starts at $2499, has a 12-core CPU and a 19-core GPU, but also starts at 512 gigabytes of storage. Now, let's talk about the differences. So one of the things that I really considered when making this decision is screen size. As someone who works in information security as well as creating these YouTube videos, having a larger screen is really important. I use my laptop to read documents all day long as well as edit my videos, usually on Final Cut Pro or DaVinci Resolve, which are both pretty similar in timeline sizes. Now personally, I really love my 16-inch display because I never really had a problem, seeing what I need to see, especially when I'm stationary, because I'll usually connect it to a 4K monitor to actually see the whole timeline in a bigger screen. However, recently I worked on my last video using the 14-inch display, and I noticed that I wasn't really feeling like my workflow felt compromised, nor did it feel like it was hindered with the 2-inch smaller display. The next category that I've considered is weight and portability. Now, the 16-inch display weighs in at 4.7 pounds versus the 14-inch display at 3.5 pounds. When I'm not working in my office studio, I usually like to bounce around the whole house or find a spot to edit for a few hours and then move to a different area once I need a change of scenery. When I was using the 14-inch, I noticed that it was definitely a lot more portable. Not only was it smaller, but it was actually lighter as well. And this might not be a huge deal for some of you, but the amount of strain that I had on my wrists carrying around the 14-inch was a lot less than if I were to carry around my 16-inch, which is slightly heavier and definitely wider. And because of this, 9 times out of 10, I'll usually leave my 16-inch plugged into our dock anyway, and then I'll just keep it on the external monitor displays. Actually, every time I travel around the house with a 16-inch, I do keep it in my laptop case just because I don't want to just hold it in my hand because it is a little bit heavier. It's a little bit clunkier to do. So I'll usually be walking around the house with my laptop case. Battery life. Now, the new M2s have gained an hour extra over the M1s. My 16-inch M1 had a 21-hour battery life, while the M2s can now last up to 22 hours, which is the longest battery life of any laptop out on the market currently. Now, that puts the 14-inch M2s at 18 hours, which is a little shorter than 22, obviously, but I don't know many people that would be using it for the full 18 hours, let alone 22. And realistically, if you're using applications, constantly web browsing, maybe even editing, really making the computer work hard, you're looking at a battery life of about 9 to 10 hours as opposed to the full 22, which again is a lot of time. As far as performance goes, this was the only metric that I really was able to test on both of these laptops. I edited a 4K video that was about 7 minutes and 30 seconds long, and when I was rendering it on the 16-inch, it took about 7 minutes and 55 seconds, and on the 14-inch, I rendered it at about 8 minutes. To be honest though, it's not a fully fair test because I didn't run a stopwatch when I was doing the M2 rendering, and I did it for the M1. However, I did look at when it started and when it ended, and they were 8 minutes apart. So 7:55 versus 8 minutes, it's pretty much the same as far as performance on the rendering. So I would say they're pretty tied at that test. So with all that said, here are my final thoughts. On the one hand, I love the portability of the 14-inch display. It can also have the capability to be connected to an external monitor, so that's not a compromise there. And of course, in my experience, my workflow really wasn't interrupted or hindered in any way with the loss of screen real estate versus the 16-inch. So comparably, This one wins because it has the portability as opposed to the 16-inch. For the 16-inch though, I can take full advantage of the bigger screen right away, even without connecting to an external monitor. But because it's slightly heavier and a little wider, as I mentioned, it is a little less portable. So I tend to just keep it on my extended monitor anyway. And it keeps me from being mobile just by a little bit, just because of how heavy it is, although it's not really exactly a deal breaker. Now with that said, for the price difference, I don't think $500 is actually worth it to upgrade to the 16-inch. I think that $500 would be better spent upgrading the storage of a 14-inch display and then maybe picking up an external monitor that can help you extend your displays should you need it, especially if you're trying to create more of a workstation for yourself. So as for me, I will not be upgrading to the M2 at this time, only because the performance is not really significant enough for me to make the change. And plus the trade-in value for my M1 through Apple is actually only gonna yield me $1,020. So just by simple math, I am gonna be holding off for now. I might wait for the rumored 3nm chips on the M3s that are supposed to be coming out later this year, which could bring improved efficiency and an even better battery life. So that might be worth a shot. And that is it for today's video. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Hopefully all this information will help you in your decision making. If you guys did like today's video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up down below. Subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you guys in the next video.